You see, Pauline, you thought Australians would just sit on their asses like wards of state. This is what you in the government assumed. You didn't realise, while the government was playing propaganda with the ABC, that the Australian people were being lied to from inside the Federal Executive Council, Pauline. And it's become very apparent, hasn't it, now that these factions are showing their faces on the media. It's very clear, given that they're all banding together in their little groups to try and defend their positions. It's very clear when I have put down on the court record, and colleagues of mine have suffered at the hands of these statists, and they've been caught out in their game, Pauline. It's very, very clear. It's also very clear that these war crime accusations aren't going away, Pauline. We're pointing the finger at the Governor-General and the Prime Minister's office and the Federal Executive Council, for Christ's sake. If you can't, fathom that in your own little mind, Pauline, I think there's a problem with your ability to know what this country actually is. It's starting to become apparent, Pauline, that this government has feared that federal red ensign. You only need to look at the Sydney Morning Herald and the ABC. Right? Both of these propaganda media arms have pushed that as a far right-wing flag when it is actually the de jure flag of the Commonwealth. What would make it right-wing when it's of a totally different bird, Pauline? Your bird is an occupying crown. Right? It has a left and right wing of arguing little ward tards that you keep under control from your bird. Now, what if they hopped onto a different bird, which had totally different wings, Pauline? How can you call these people far right? And who's calling them far right? These are the factions that are becoming apparent inside a foreign occupying force in this government. Right? These are the factions that are trying to control an administration over the top of the people, as the people are kept as plebs. Right? Now, Anne Bressington, years ago, she was caught walking the halls of Parliament there and was recorded using the word pleb, calling all the citizens plebs. Right? And we've got Penny Wong on video calling the Australian citizenship a dead legal fiction, Pauline. These are the words coming out of your very own mouths, Pauline. Your very own mouths. We'll do the Babbitt thing. Your very own mouths, Pauline. Your very own mouths. Right? This is the mockery that is your parliament, in that it has so many different factions trying to bid for control over the Commonwealth of Australia. Right? You've got Fabians, you've got Jesuits, you've got Rosicrucians, you've got Freemasons. But what you don't have is Australians, Pauline. You don't have real Australians in the Parliament under an Australian imperial crown, under their Anzac, Pauline. You don't have any of them in the Parliament. You all took foreign oaths to a foreign military curial power that handed its military over to WEF partners to control. That's who you have in the government, Pauline, and we're fully aware of it. Right? We're also fully aware of the fact that you are war criminals at international law for all of your injections. Now, Babbitt, what I'm going to make you aware of is the fact that if New South Wales police committed forced medical procedure inside a New South Wales jail long before lockdowns even took place, long before, and if they created acts of torture going back as far as 2015, Babbitt, Pauline, right? This is the kind of extent that we're looking at. If this is the reality, that New South Wales police have committed international war crimes going as far back as 2015, that's the introduction of your Biosecurity Act, Pauline. What's the Biosecurity Act actually for, given that there's all this bio-warfare going on right now? Did you preempt bio-warfare, Pauline? Did you set up the government so that when bio-warfare arrived, you were already set up for your communist ways inside the government on behalf of WEF partners that like to put everything into their logistics systems, Pauline? Logistics systems, like we have to pay for the air we breathe kind of stuff, where communists come and tax us until we're taxed so much we can't even save any week of our money, Pauline. This is where you, as a government, have driven this country, Pauline, from your foreign occupying imperial power to take the silver spoon offshore. Offshore, Pauline, offshore. At the cost of all Australians, Pauline. We've explained this over and over. You as the Australian government, are the demise and at the cost of all Australians. This is the direct reality. You, the Australian government, disarmed all Australians. You, this Australian government, came here in 1954 after you abdicated the throne in 1936 in the United Kingdom. Right? You thought you could divide an empire and then conquer it by taking its head from 54 countries and then turning those 54 countries into nation corporation states like Australia under the Great Seal of Australia. Right? This is something you need to realise, Pauline. We know you don't operate for the Commonwealth of Australia under the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia. It's very apparent when you smash the Great Seal of Australia in half in 1973 and replace it with the Great Seal of Australia 1973, and then remove the head of power in Gough Whitlam 1975 and continue on in Federal Executive Council instead of Office of the Cabinet, which you merged with the Prime Minister's office in 1971 into Prime Minister and Cabinet. We know all these things, Pauline. We know who you work for. We know what oath you took. We know the criminal offences that have occurred while you have operated under that oath. And these are the literal and technical things that you need to realise in international law. Your oath means everything. You need to realise you boarded the vessel of a foreign curial power that arrived in this land to administer it, Pauline. But I'm sure you're aware of this, given they arrested you, put you in jail, and you came back. They taught you the game. They showed you that they were a foreign curial power. They showed you that you were a ward of the state, and you had to change the way you lived. You had to separate, render unto, didn't you? And then you took an oath to them so that you could enter their parliament and control the children. Because you wanted to control the children, and you didn't realise that a foreign curial power had all the money and didn't allow Australians to have money because it put Australia in an international criminal war. Criminal war. A criminal war that's going on in Ukraine right now, Pauline. Criminal at the United Nations. Criminal at international law, Pauline, which means your Governor-General has supported a criminal action in the Ukraine from this soil, Pauline. And we don't even address these things while war crimes are committed by New South Wales and Victorian police on a daily basis. That's right, the actual police, Pauline. They're supposed to look after this country, Pauline, are the ones that are manipulating it and controlling it and not allowing families to return to their de jure states while they're pushed down as wards of the state and manipulated, controlled by a foreign curial power and its police forces, Pauline. There's a reality that's come. You should know this by now, Pauline. We ain't standing down. If those police officers want to continue committing war crimes on our soil, then they should basically get a heads up that courtroom's waiting for them, no matter what their rank. Just following orders was no excuse at law, Pauline. That was what the Nuremberg decided. The Yamashita Protocol decided that issuing orders against the law was outside of the law. So I'd suggest you go and warn that petty little woman, New South Wales Police Commissioner, that she's skating on thin ice from her failed command. Failed command, Pauline. An absolute failed command, Pauline. And we look at the Governor-General's office and the failed command there, and the culture that we talk about in the Brereton Report, a culture that goes all the way up the ranks, Pauline, into the government, Pauline, where you find Tony Abbott and George Pell, Pauline. You know, these people are out on a world stage right now thinking they can get away with it, Pauline. You only need to look at the words of John Howard and Tony Abbott and Costello. Like I said, they think they're going to get away with it, Pauline. But I'm telling you that there are way too many people out here that actually know what they've done now. You think this is turning around, you are sadly mistaken, as you hand the military to WEF partners and allow war criminals to get away with what they've done for the last 70 years in our land. You're sadly mistaken, Pauline, given that it is already sealed on the Supreme Court of New South Wales court record, and we have the mind space to be able to define very clearly all of your criminal actions across that entire parliament, Pauline. This is a reality that's coming. It's a double check. You gave away our land and played around with sovereignty and played around with the voice and played around with our assets and played around with our estate, God's estate. Albo is in the middle of committing acts of treason against God's estate right now, and you think you're going to get away with it, just like all of these last Prime Ministers and Federal Executive Council think they've got away with it for the last 50 years. No, Pauline, the reality check is coming upon you all. You are international war criminals at international law, and the world, the entire world, needs to see what you have done from your eugenics point of view and your Nazi debt-driven point of view, where you totally think you can enslave the children of these families until 2100. This is technical and real slavery at international law, Pauline. And you think you can sit there in a parliament and talk to an Australian people like they're obligated to put the debts on the backs of their own sweat labour instead of the usufruct of their country. You are sadly mistaken, Pauline. You have committed grave acts of slavery, real world slavery, by doing this. Frydenberg should be brought before the International Criminal Court for putting slavery and sweat labour directly on the people's backs instead of the usufruct of the country itself. This is God's estate talking to you now, Pauline. It's time to wake up. It's time for that reality check.